There's something living inside your gut right now that isn't bacteria, isn't human, and isn't anything they taught you in school. And researchers say it can slow your entire digestive system down by half. You've changed your diet, cut gluten, cut dairy, started taking probiotics, and you're still bloated every single day. That's because you've been fixing the wrong problem. Here's the part almost nobody tells you. This isn't happening in your stomach. Not even where you imagine your gut bacteria live. It's happening somewhere that's supposed to be almost empty. And when it isn't, your body starts producing a gas that doesn't just cause bloating, but can also change how fast food moves through your entire digestive system. If you've ever unbuttoned your pants under the table, taken a before photo in the morning and looked like a different person by night, been told it's just stress, and handed an informational pamphlet, you know what it's like to live in a body that seems to betray you on its own schedule. This isn't the bloating that goes away with a yoga pose. This is the bloating that's been quietly building for years. This isn't another 5 foods to avoid video. We're going straight to the real cause, the organism, the gases, and why common probiotics often make things worse instead of better. Stay until the end, because the most disturbing part isn't the bloating. It's what this can quietly do to your mood, your energy, and a deficiency almost nobody checks for, until the real damage is already done. A healthy gut takes about 48 hours to digest all the food that passes through it. In people with this condition, that number stretches past 84 hours, 3.5 days. Your body isn't digesting slowly by accident. Something is actively putting the brakes on the process. Right now, inside you, there's a system running constantly that you've probably never thought about. And it might be the real reason your stomach changes shape throughout the day, not the food itself. And here's the strange part. Most people try to fix it in exactly the wrong way. Maybe you've cut sugar, dairy, and gluten, tried probiotics, tried eating healthier, and you still feel bloated. That creates a very specific kind of frustration, the feeling that nothing works in your body, like your gut has its own plans and you're just a passenger on the ride. Maybe the pattern looks like this. You feel fine in the morning. By night, your belly has changed shape. Clothes that fit at 9 a.m. feel tight by 6 p.m. And it happens even when you haven't overeaten. Most people assume it's fat, water retention, or some food sensitivity, but there's a deeper cause. And it has very little to do with the specific food you ate. Your gut isn't a simple tube. It's a living environment. Trillions of microorganisms live inside it, and the moment you eat, they get to work, breaking down food and producing gas as a natural byproduct. That happens to everyone. The difference is balance. When that balance shifts, certain groups start to dominate. More gas, slower digestion, a gut that stops working at its normal rhythm. This isn't a disease with a single name. It's a functional imbalance, which is exactly why it never shows up on a routine test and never presents as one clear symptom. It shows up as a cluster of confusing sensations, bloating, pressure, a feeling of instability in the body with no obvious cause. Curiosity seed? Leave open. And here's something worth sitting with. If this imbalance can change the shape of your stomach by inches in a single day, what else might it be quietly doing somewhere you can't see? This is the part that surprises people, including some doctors. The organism most associated with chronic bloating and constipation isn't a bacterium. It's something called archaea, a completely different branch of life. The main species researchers keep finding is called Methanobrevibacter smithii. It's not dangerous like an infection. It's opportunistic in an even stranger way. Here's the mechanism. Certain bacteria break down fiber and release hydrogen gas. Other organisms then consume that hydrogen and turn it into methane. One organism's waste becomes another's fuel. When that second group overgrows, Doctors now call it intestinal methanogen overgrowth, or EMO. It used to be classified together with SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, but researchers gave it its own name because these organisms aren't bacteria and they don't stay confined to one part of the intestine. Not all gut gases behave the same way. Methane specifically is linked to more severe constipation, and the more methane a person produces, the lower the likelihood of diarrhea, and the higher the likelihood of being constipated for days. This gas doesn't just sit there causing pressure. It actively slows down how the gut functions, and the symptoms go beyond the stomach. People with this overgrowth report bloating most often, but also abdominal pain, gas, and in some cases diarrhea, which is exactly why it gets mistaken for stress or just IBS instead of being investigated further. So why doesn't this show up on a routine checkup? Because it's not something a blood test checks for. The actual test is a breath test, and almost nobody asks for it because most doctors jump straight to try probiotics. And here's the strange twist. A large portion of healthy adults already carry some of these organisms with no symptoms at all. So the organism itself isn't the problem, it's the overgrowth. When the population crosses a threshold and starts producing enough gas to physically interfere with how the gut functions. That's also why generic probiotics can backfire. Studies suggest a large share of people diagnosed with IBS may actually have this instead. By feeding more fermentable fiber to an already overloaded gut, you're not fixing the imbalance. You might actually be feeding it. This is where it gets personal. Many people notice their symptoms cluster around meals because these organisms ferment whatever you just ate in real time. That's the answer to a question almost everyone with chronic bloating has asked. Why do I look fine in the morning and pregnant by dinner time? It's not your imagination. It's a real-time fermentation process running on your eating schedule. This also explains something that feels contradictory. A healthy salad loaded with raw vegetables and beans can cause more bloating than a plain piece of toast. Not because the salad is bad, but because it's exactly the fuel these organisms need. Now, the part we saved for last. This doesn't stay limited to digestion. Because the small intestine is where most nutrients get absorbed, sustained overgrowth there can quietly drain your iron, B12, and vitamin D levels, exactly the deficiencies behind the fatigue people blame on just being busy. And it goes further. Researchers have linked this same imbalance to brain fog, joint pain, and mood changes. Read that again. Brain fog, mood, joint pain. Symptoms that send people to a neurologist, a psychiatrist, a rheumatologist, when the real cause might be a population of single-celled organisms nobody thought to test for. It doesn't show up as a single disease. It fragments into symptoms that seem disconnected, sending people through years of treatments that never reach the actual cause. If any of this sounds familiar, the bloating that builds throughout the day, the fatigue, the unexplained brain fog, the next step isn't another elimination diet. It's asking a doctor about SIBO and, in my opinion, breath testing. Because most bloating advice online focuses on the wrong part of the gut.